Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's Turning Towards Life. This is Lizzie and Justin. It is 9:30 something on a beautiful Sunday in April, and we are here to be together to bring this wonderful source that Justin has brought for us this week. And I want to just begin by apologising that we aren't here at 9 o'clock but 9:30. As many of us will be experiencing at the moment, we get one chance to go out for a walk each day, and we've been going very early in the morning. And this morning our little girl didn't wake up until 7:30 or 7:20 or something. Anyway, so we went on our normal walk, and at about 10 to 9 my husband, we were at the furthest point of our walk on a bench having an apple and a water, and Matthew, my husband, said, "Oh, we've got to watch the time for Turning Towards Life," and then looked at his watch and realised we were ages away. And it's not lost on me that a big theme of this source today is about time. So I'm wondering how we're going to speak about it that's relevant to what just happened. But I literally was completely in a world of trees and sunshine and no clock and no mobile, and found myself very far away. So that's why we're a little bit late. So my apologies if anybody has this deeply embedded into their routine listening live and it's shifted things around. And I was fully immersed in the beauty of the sky and the trees and the grass and being outside. So I'm sorry, and I'm not sorry all at the same time. We're a bit late this morning. And Justin, it's so great that we're going to be discussing this thing about time, because this period for me, I keep missing things because I'm just not relating to time in the same way anymore. So it's very interesting, and I'm looking forward to working out how that is through talking to you today.
It's striking me that you might, Lizzie, have been in some kind of deep time rather than clock time.
Yeah.
So, well, good morning, everybody, too. I'm so pleased to be here, and I want to say a particular good morning to all of you who are with us live, who managed to hang on in there, but also the many of you who watch later and who are maybe listening in your ears and on the podcast at some completely other time to us doing this. That's the other thing that this technology allows for, is this extraordinary time shifting that we can do, where you could catch us in an hour or a month or a year or 10 years and we'd still be here having this conversation. I'm feeling very exceptionally grateful for the technology this morning. And I was just saying to you, Lizzie, before we came on, that we've been using the Zoom video platform for all the time for Turning Towards Life. And I was reading yesterday about how many people on their side are putting in huge efforts to make sure that this amazing technology is still available, even as the demand for it has gone up, I think 30 or 40 fold. It's still here and it's elegant and seamless. And so I'm very grateful for that this morning, and for Facebook Live and for podcasting, all those kind of things. I also want to welcome all of you who've joined us. So I know it means so much to me that our conversations, Lizzie, which have extraordinary value just for the two of us, also have value for other people. And so I'm feeling very glad this morning that people spread this around and bring whatever gifts there are in this conversation into the orbit of others. So welcome to all of you who are joining us maybe for the first time this week. We're really glad to have you with us. And we're going to do what we always do, which is to read a source and then talk about it. You can find the sources every time, either in our Facebook group, which is, you could just search for Turning Towards Life and join us there. We will gladly welcome you into the Facebook group. But we also publish them a little bit later on, usually on the Sunday, where we do the conversation on our website, which is turningtowards.life. And you can find all the videos and all of the sources here. And this piece on time is something that has been newly written by a very dear friend of mine, Rob Poynton, and I'd really encourage you to check out his writing, which is wonderful. He's one of those people who thinks deep and far about the world, and this is called How Long Will This Last? So thank you to Rob for writing this. I wonder how long this is going to last. I imagine we all do, which is understandable, but absurd. not only do we have no idea, but being home for a few weeks or months is the least of it. In some ways, what is happening now will never leave us. It would be remarkable, disappointing even, if this experience didn't change us one way or another. The question reveals how habitually we think and talk about time in a limited way, as if it had no other dimension, depth, or quality beyond a number of minutes, hours, or days. As if all it had were length, which is actually just a metaphor borrowed from the world of physical space. As if all units of time were equivalent, standardized, uniform. They aren't. Time has the capacity to open up, deepen, expand, or extend, even as the clock continues its regimented march. For example, on a reading weekend at Lacerna, tech philosopher Tom Chatfield wrote, "Time is different here. It has been waiting for us. I remember time like this from when I was young, baggy, generous, ambling, and then dashing at the pace of light and landscape. Pauses do that. As we hunker down, constrained in space, perhaps we can create a different kind of freedom for ourselves by shifting our relationship with time. Instead of behaving like dutiful consumers, with no idea beyond counting and spending the days or weeks until this is over, can we play with it, explore it, savor it, sense it, feel it, or get lost in it? Perhaps if we pay less attention and attach less importance to duration, we might find this time has more to give us than we realized."
Time has the capacity to open up, deepen, expand, or extend, even as the clock continues its regimented march. For example, on a reading weekend at Lacerna, tech philosopher Tom Chatfield wrote, "Time is different here. It has been waiting for us. I remember time like this from when I was young, baggy, generous, ambling, then dashing at the pace of light and landscape. Pauses do that. As we hunker down, constrained in space, perhaps we can create a different kind of freedom for ourselves by shifting our relationship with time. Instead of behaving like dutiful consumers with no idea beyond counting and spending the days or weeks until this is over, can we play with it, explore it, savor it, sense it, feel it, or get lost in it? Perhaps if we pay less attention and attach less importance to duration, we might find this time has more to give us than we realized."
There's a particular sentence in here, Lizzie, near the end, which when you were reading it touched me extraordinarily deeply. And it was this, instead of behaving like dutiful consumers with no idea beyond counting and spending the days or weeks until this is over. And I could feel as you were reading it that the question is relevant to this time when so many of the ordinary ways in which we engage in life have been suspended or changed, and we find ourselves in radically different circumstances. But it's the same question with the whole of life. It's quite possible to come at life as if the limited time that we have, the finite time that we have, is something to be consumed. Our job is to consume it, to spend it until it's over. And that's the mark of a life well lived. And I say that with quite some sense of feeling in this moment to how that is, in some ways, that is the dominant narrative of our times, that time is to be spent. And you have to spend it well. And spending it well often means filling it, or being busy, or accomplishing a lot, or having a lot, using it to have a lot. And like many people at the moment, I mean, this has always been true, but I suppose right now I'm feeling the closeness in of mortality. There are people close in who are sick. There are people in my immediate circle who've died in the last week, some of them from the coronavirus. And of course, that brings us into an encounter with the limits of our own time. Certainly does for me. Has me realize, my life could end this week, which has always been true. It's not any more true. It's not any different now. It's always been the case. And then the question, when I know that, will I get into a frantic kind of grabbing of time? Like it's something with length and I have to just sort of haul it in. Or could I, as Rob is inviting us into, could I drop into an entirely different relationship with what time is? Where what time is, well, I love this language that Rob has of time having depth, for example. When time has depth, it doesn't matter how long something is, that's not the question anymore. It's a different, there's a different kind of relationship with what's here. So I'm very struck by Rob's point in this, that the idea that time has length is actually just a sort of invention, that we might not experience time as having length if we hadn't at some point decided that time had length.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things already to say. The first thing that struck me is that when you're reading the beginning part of this, there's a kind of quality to deconstructing time, which this piece of writing does for me. Like, as in what you just saying, you know, it's a construct. It's like the length is an attribute that we've given it. It's a story about time. And when that gets kind of dismantled, I can feel my structure kind of moving. Like I don't know. Yeah, I don't know myself anymore or something. There's something about the strength of time in my story of what it is to be human, that when that gets named as a construct rather than a truth, an absolute kind of, it is true, but something we've made, I kind of start kind of reeling. And I really appreciate the way this is written for doing that for me. Like, it's a real opening. And then as it goes on, I feel very I feel really met actually by this, because I think one of my older coping mechanisms has been to know what's happening on a Monday, know what's happening on a Tuesday, know what's happening on a Wednesday, to give myself some punctuation almost, or something to look forward to, or something to mark time by, or something. And at the moment, I honestly don't know what day of the week it is. I don't know what time it is. I know the rhythm of our day because I have a breastfeeding baby and a sleeping baby, and you know, those things are happening in bath time, whatever. But it's a funny feeling when things are unfolding in a rhythmical way, but it's not about what time it is, or what day it is, or what, you know, what should be happening when. And almost I've got to the point where when someone says, oh, should we talk on Tuesday, I get a bit panicky. I'm like, oh God, when's Tuesday gonna be? I don't know how to like relate to Tuesday anymore. So I think something's really, really shifted, and I'm feeling the gift of that. And also something kind of very personal to me is that before I became a mum, I was really frightened of becoming a mum and feeling the endlessness of days and not knowing what to do with myself or a baby. And somehow I was kind of mitigating for that before all this quarantine isolation thing happened, by giving myself things to mark my week out. And now that's all been taken away. So I can't go to yoga anymore. I can't go for a walk in the park with my mum friends on a Wednesday. I can't do this thing I did on a Thursday. It's given me like a deeper kind of confidence that I can be in a home, at home, doing simple things, and there not being a lot of things to hang my life on. And I'm okay. I'm happy. I'm joyful. I'm settled. And I get really frightened at times because of the news, but actually in my home and the life that I'm trying to create feels really possible because of this. So that's one of the gifts I'm receiving from it, is that I haven't needed, as I normally have done, to kind of keep a handle on the real world or something by participating in a way that gives me rhythm and routine. And so I already find this time is filled with gifts for me as a person who didn't know how to, I'm quite extroverted. I rely on other people a lot of the time to get my, my life force and energy feeling like it's got some life in it. And so this is potentially like a really scary thing for me. And yet, because it's just been imposed and I've had to accept it and work with each wave of constriction, I have to find my way. I have to, and because I have to, I am. And I do feel lost in it. I do feel like I'm feeling time differently. And so this piece of writing is very validating and welcoming and discombobulating all at the same time. And I think that's what's being done at the moment. It's like things are being undone. And then what's left? And then how do we embrace the what's left, given all of the things that we normally rely on are taken away? I'm really, really appreciating this way of it being written like this.
Showing me, Lizzie, what you're saying, that our relationship to time, like to so much else, is one of many kinds of relationship. It's a position that we've taken. We've taken a stand in relation to time that's very often the one that, first of all, we got handed, and then we get into making it ourselves by our ongoing way of being in the world. And I'm starting to see in this time where there has been lots for me to do. The nature of the work I've been doing recently has meant that there's still lots to attend to. But I can feel that a part of me is relaxing about time, that I'm not treating time like a scarcity. I can feel how often my background mood is there isn't enough time. And so because there isn't enough time, I have to move rapidly from one thing to another. And then, for example, if I don't do a daily practice that's important to me, like a sitting meditation practice, which really matters to me, if I don't do it, my story will be, well, there wasn't enough time. But I think a much better story, a much better account of it is not that there was not enough time, but that I was in relationship with time in such a way that it felt and seemed like there was not enough. Because here in this different time space, it feels to me like there's enough time for everything.
Mm.
And that's not because I'm cramming it in, but because the question of enoughness doesn't seem to be the question. And I'm noticing that time has texture to it in ways that I often don't get to feel. If I think about how time was feeling in the weeks leading up to our quarantining time, I would have said that time in a way felt pretty uniform, except for the fact that I have in my life practices of setting aside, like Shabbat, the Jewish Sabbath, where I stop everything, and that's a time practice, which is to go, this time is different. But I'm noticing that different parts of the day feel different, that I'm affected by the sunshine and the light differently, that my body has rhythms through the day that are going on quite aside from my own intentionality. My body's awake at some point, more tired at other points, that time is thicker and thinner at different times. And I'm thinking as I'm talking that one of the people who I was reading before this different time we're in, was I've been reading a little bit of Marcus Aurelius, who was a Roman emperor who thought very deeply about the nature of life and the nature of time and how to live in it. And he says this extraordinary thing, which is really to Rob's point. He says, duration of time is a real mistake to get fixed on duration of time. So, because it doesn't matter if you live for a year or 100 years, you don't actually have anything different from one another, because all we have is our engagement with this that's here at any moment. And that for me is speaking right into this point that Rob is making, that is to relate to time as a consumer. We can get completely fixated on how much of it have I had and how much of it do I have left and how much of it is there to do this, instead of being in time like a river or like a forest or like a still mountain lake or like the sky, in completely different ways of settling into it. And as I say all of those, one of the things I can feel just now is how time might carry me instead of time being the thing that I chase.
Yeah, it's reminding me, Justin, of how we can, there's this kind of phrase that I find exists in our world quite strongly, which is making the most of things. And I notice that when I have that narrative, or when it's around me in somebody else, it feels like an attack on time, like we're trying to maximize or to be efficient or something. Feels like this kind of pressure that we have to make the time having been worth it or something, which feels like such a distraction from allowing what is unfolding to unfold, and such a distraction from noticing, and such a distraction from being. And I think that making the most of it story comes from this inherent kind of background story of a lack, like a lack of, there's a lack of this, and therefore I have to squeeze every drop of it I can out, because I've got to, it's not going to be here forever, which is another kind of way that we've made a length out of it that stops and starts, instead of it being this everlasting continuum that's just rolling. And so I'm feeling that this time now in our history, in our lives, is such an interesting and kind of compelling, for me, like observing the liberation that it brings to let go of those stories on it. And I feel really invited into the rolling, undulating nature of unknownness, in a way, because we're waiting in some ways. If I allowed it to be that, like Rob's saying, we could just be waiting for this all to be over, like as if this is a blank space of nothingness before real life can begin again. And yet it feels like the opposite of that. Like my life might now look completely different coming out the end of these restrictions, because of what I learned being from having been restricted. And I feel like I'm going to take forwards a kind of an allowing that's possible, where a day doesn't have to have stuff in it. A day doesn't have to be punctuated in exactly the same way. And I realize I'm in a funny situation because I'm on maternity space and time, and with a baby it's completely different. But I think that's also the gift that babies bring too, which is that you're not on a normal schedule anymore. I'm beholden to a little person's needs, and time is different. Even in that, time is different. So all of these different things in our lives bring different kinds of stories about time. And yeah, it's a really fascinating and kind of a deconstructing thing to talk about. And it feels like it's filled with this kind of openness of wondering and curiosity that if I was treating time in an old habitual narrative, I wouldn't be seeing what's arising in the same way at all. I would just be kind of it invites me just to kind of trot along with life rather than wonder and be open and have like an open hands approach to what's here and what's available.
Really so struck by what you said about time as a lack.
Mm.
And I think that I think it's our sense that we have that we ought to be in control of things that has us relate. I think it's really easy to relate to time in a resentful way.
Mm.
There won't be enough. There isn't enough. There isn't enough now, and there isn't enough in my life. My life has to end. And because I'm resentful about it, I'm going to master it. I'm going to be in charge of it. I am going to be on top of it. I'm going to have it. And I can see how poisonous that is to so many other possibilities.
Mm.
So I'm wondering, as we're talking about what it would be like to give up resentment towards time and to make a move of two things sort of came through whilst you were talking. One is, what if we just let time take us instead of us trying to take time? And that wouldn't mean that we would stop doing things and attending to things. We would simply be in a different relationship to it. The other way that struck me is to wonder about what if we just simply knew ourselves as time.
Mm.
If we knew ourselves as time itself, we wouldn't be so caught up with how much of it we had and where it was all going to and how come we couldn't get hold of it. We would simply let ourselves be in sort of reciprocal partnership with life, and then life would start to have texture that it didn't have, and we would be less afraid of what was happening with time, was to sort of undo our separation from it. And I think sometimes we might get afraid that if we did that, somehow we just become blobs, wobbling around on the floor, doing never moving again. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think quite the opposite. I think we would find ourselves moved to love and to feel and to attend to and to take care of, and to move quickly when moving quickly was called for, and to move slowly when it was called for, and to play when it was called for. We'd be less sure that we knew what time was, and we'd be more open to the mystery of it that was presenting itself to us.
Yeah, I feel really invited by this question of what's my relationship to it. That it's not an absolute something, that it's something I have some choice in. I have some consciousness that I could bring to it. Like, what are my stories about time? And to then, if they're named as a story, then what even is it anyway? And this invitation to be as time, so that I'm not differentiating from it, but I'm living as whatever this thing is, because now time's become meaningless all of a sudden in my mind. I feel like when I look at things, often they evaporate. It's like one of those funny things about inquiring into what things are. Then it's like, oh, I don't even know what it is anymore, and what I was doing with it. And so I'm appreciating that as you're talking, that's happened for me. It's like, my goodness, well, if it's all a story, then what? If it's all made up, then what? And then in the then what space is like, gets really spacious and kind of nothingy, but very gentle, and like something like a proper idea could be born, something like that. So I feel really grateful for that. And I love it that we're having this conversation, because it would be so easy to stay in the narrative if there was something horribly wrong right now. And there is a lot going on that's horribly wrong, but there's also a lot that's not horribly wrong. And I really want to stay in touch with the parts of life at this time that are real and happening in life, and also what's being born in us of this time because of this time. So I'm very grateful to be speaking this way and to find joy in inquiry, and to know that this is all still possible, even though every time I watch the news I go down some horrible dark rabbit hole. That the rabbit hole's not the only thing that exists in life right now, and there's a lot to be in contact with that's a lot bigger than the small and fearful thoughts that I might fly into every maybe a few hours or every day or something. So I'm very grateful for that, and grateful for us doing this, and grateful for you, Justin, and grateful for Rob for bringing this lovely piece of writing as well.
Yeah, me too. I'm struck as a closing thought by the power of an ongoing practice that is, of course, related to time, but whether we do it at 9 or 9:30 in the morning, we keep doing, somehow is already in a different narrative about time. To keep doing that, to say, well, we keep going whatever else is moving around, as long as we're physically able to. And I'm ending this conversation very touched, Lizzie, by your language about being gentle with time, letting ourselves be gentle with this question. Partly because I think it's true for me, and I'm sure it's true for many other people, that gentle is the last thing that we are with time. We're frightened of it, we're voracious of it, we're consuming of it, we're desperate about it, we're sorry about it, we're scared of it, what about being gentle with it and letting it be gentle with us?
Yeah.
I can hear a small person starting to call, and it is actually time for us to finish for today. I just want to say thank you to you, Lizzie, and to Rob for writing this, and to everybody who's with us, that you listen and watch, and some of you get to have a conversation in the Facebook group, and all of that, all the different ways that people engage with us is also such a great support for us being in this conversation. And I really want to say thank you to you all, and also encourage you, tell others who you think would benefit from this. We would be so glad to have them with us too. And please, everyone, take really good care of yourselves and stay well. And all being well, we will be back probably at the normal announced time of 9 o'clock on Sunday morning next week, but we'll see. Who knows? Okay, bye-bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.